Hi, my name is Dan Burnett, and I'm the Executive Director of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. I'm very pleased to welcome you today to our celebration of the 6th anniversary of Ethereum. We are holding this event in honor of all of those who have, in the Ethereum ecosystem, who have worked so hard to help make Ethereum the most stable and capable blockchain platform in the world. What a year it's been, right? This last year, from the growth of DeFi to NFTs to, well, okay, I'll leave all the rest of that for the other speakers that we have coming up. But what I'm personally most excited about is that over the past year, we've begun to see a realization of some of the original vision of Ethereum. And in honor of that, we have some special guests today who are eminently qualified to talk about that original vision, where we have gone in the past few years, and where we're likely to be going in the future. Now, I am not going to have the privilege of introducing these particular guests. That privilege will go to our membership growth specialist, James Harsh, who joined us a few months ago. In the short time that James has been here, he has really made an incredible impact on our membership within the EA, and in particular on how members can communicate with one another and learn about the benefits of the EA in helping you to grow your business. James is a great guy. If you have not met him, I suggest that you reach out to him on LinkedIn and chat with him, and he'll be happy to talk with you about Ethereum, because boy, he's just incredibly passionate about Ethereum and business use of Ethereum and how that works. So with that, I would like to hand things over to our Master of Ceremonies, James Harsh. Over to you, James.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for that great introduction, and I really appreciate your kind words. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and welcome again. My name is James Harsh, and as Dan mentioned, I am the growth specialist here at the EEA Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And it is my great honor and privilege to be your MC for today's celebration. And this is truly a global event, a global celebration, as today I'm in Mexico City, and we have speakers and you, the attendees, logging in from all parts of the world. So once again, welcome to the EEA's Ethereum 6th Anniversary Celebration event. We're going to have a lot of fun today, learning more about Ethereum's past, present, and amazingly bright future. You're in for a treat. As Dan mentioned, we've got some fascinating speakers lined up. So let's not delay, and let's get this party started. For our first round of speakers, I'd like to bring to the stage Karen Scarborough of BP and Eva Balin of the Graph Foundation. They're going to speak about the state of Ethereum and the Ethereum ecosystem. Karen, Eva, are you there?
Great. Thanks for having us. We're going to get up our presentation right quick. So excited to be here. We're just going to kick off the event with a bit of a discussion on the metrics around Ethereum and really identifying the growth that we've seen in the past, like you said. So we'll talk about a brief history of the protocol itself, an update on where we are by the numbers, and some data by the graph as well with Eva, and what to look for next. So as a protocol with Ethereum, I think it's equally important, as we've seen the evolutions around DeFi and all the applications, to actually look at the protocol itself and give some credit to the Ethereum core developer team and the Ethereum foundations for the evolutions in this category. Because from the time that Ethereum went live in 2015, beyond the major forks and announcements that you see in the news, there's also been a tremendous amount of evolution at the core protocol level for refining things from a transactional level for pricing to allowing methods for scaling that, unless we had put these core foundational principles in, we wouldn't be able to have the scaling solutions that we're looking at today. And also improvements to how the Ethereum virtual machine compiles the Solidity language And this, as many of us here know, led to things like being able to launch the Beacon chain to start the movement to proof of stake. And more recently, as we've moved to layer 2 technologies and actually scaling more of what this can accomplish, that's led to hundreds of projects building on what we call layer 2 technologies. And even around other forms of scaling and privacy, there's been an evolution around languages that allow developers to start to build in this scenario as well. So as we mentioned, the movement to proof of stake has been happening over the past years realistically. And this, for those in the audience, is the movement away from proof of work as a consensus mechanism, which does take a significant amount of energy and resources to accomplish, to a way that actually enables us to do the same mechanism, a similar mechanism on the order of cutting out 99% of the energy inefficiencies in this. So from where we've seen the beginning of the year having on the order of 50,000 or so different individual validators participating in the Beacon chain validation network, now we're at over 200,000 independent accounts validating on this network. That's locking up about 5% of the Ether in Ethereum right now. So we mentioned the growth in the ecosystem, and this graph here shows how many decentralized applications over the years have actually been built and deployed on Ethereum. And what's significant at this graph, if you look at the years, I would say 2-3 years ago, where there was a tremendous amount of skepticism and we were experiencing the lull after a hype that we saw in 2017-18, you can see that a lot of developers and teams continued to build during this time. And a lot of our most prominent applications that we hear of today in the news were actually teams building several years ago. And as we continue, you can see continuous growth in this category as well. So what this has really led to is a whole ecosystem of an environment and tool system out there, whether that's DeFi or non-fungible tokens. You can see that all these services are building on top of each other and integrating in an ecosystem that continues to develop. So there were some metrics that we talked about in April at an Enterprise Ethereum Alliance that I thought were worth revisiting. At the time, we looked at DeFi user growth, and the number at that time was 2.3 million individual Ethereum accounts participating in major DeFi applications. And since that April timeframe, that has grown to over 3 million at this point, and does continue on that growth trajectory, which is interesting to watch. From total locked value, which, going over that metric again, it's the value locked in smart contracts that are associated with DeFi applications. This number, as you can see, has fluctuated. The major changes are the inclusion of additional projects in this category. And from the April timeframe, there's also been a shift of locked value growing more significantly in lending than in exchanges. And part of what you can look at as some rationale around that is there's been capital efficiency improvements in exchanges that a lot of us are looking to see how this distribution continues to develop and evolve. Settlement, we talked last time that Ethereum settled 1.5 trillion in transactions in Q1. In Q2, they've increased to 2.5 trillion in transactions. The distribution between Ether and stablecoins is about 50-50. So this puts us on track, if those growth trends continue, to settling $8 trillion worth of transactions by the end of 2021, if those trends continue. Some additional metrics to look at that we didn't look at last time was the capital managed by what are called DAO, or decentralized organization treasuries. So this has grown to over $5 billion worth of capital within these companies that are mainly DeFi at this point, but it shows the decentralized nature of how much is being managed by communities within Ethereum. versus other forms of capital that typically come into new companies or new organizations. So the other metric we looked at back in April was transaction fees on DeFi applications. I have here the April 2021 metrics for the transaction fees that in the pink here are incurred on DeFi applications. In the graph in July of this year now, we do see that those have adjusted, and we'll go into a little bit of why those are a little bit less than they were in April 2021. So that certainly has to do with the volume of transactions happening on Ethereum and the demand for that. So you can see from this graph on the left that the transaction volume has come down a bit, but part of the consideration for how this needs to be viewed is if you look on the right, the scaling of scaling of applications rather is also occurring off the main network, either in layer 2 scaling technologies, bridges to other chains. So to really understand where the activity is moving and how it's fluctuating, it's worth it to take a look outside the immediate mainnet ecosystem and see what's being developed in alternative ways to what we're typically used to. So, but there's much more than transaction volume that Ava's going to talk about now with the graph.
Thanks, Karen. So for anyone who isn't aware, the graph is an indexing and querying layer for on-chain data. So if you're building an application or just looking for some on-chain metrics, the graph open APIs would be the best place to get that. And so we think of API queries, so queries to the subgraphs, as a great proxy for Ethereum usage. And the reason that is because a query fundamentally is just somebody visiting a website, similar to a Uniswap. And so by looking at the graph stats, you can kind of gauge the way that, usage and developer growth has been accelerating. And so over the last, year, we've seen that growth accelerate between 8 to 12%, new developers deploying APIs or using existing APIs. And similarly, we're seeing the actual development of the APIs grow 10 to 15%. And to us, this signifies that there's a lot more Ethereum development happening that's agnostic to any bull or bear market cycle. And if we look to the next slide, we can see actually a few of the top dApps that are using open APIs. So we strongly believe that the Ethereum ethos of decentralized and open source infrastructure is actually being maintained. And some examples of how DeFi apps like a Synthetics or a Uniswap are using subgraphs is for data like trade volume. So if you're on the Uniswap website and you see total trade volume for a specific asset, yield farming, looking at values like total value locked or APY, these are interesting stats. And as we get more complex and start building more complex applications, we'll also start seeing more complex requests for data. If we head to the next slide, we can see some of the trends that we're actually seeing in terms of those APIs being deployed. So we're seeing around 70% of the subgraphs, so APIs, are related to DeFi, while we're also seeing an increasing trend of NFTs. And what's really exciting is this is coming off of the hot NFT winter, but we're also seeing a lot more of that continuing even into the summer with a lot of generative art and even sort of NFT DeFi interplays. The other really interesting one to me is cross-chain. And so this implies a lot more cross-chain assets are coming onto Ethereum. Things like Bitcoin, Badger DAO, these kinds of integrations of interchain assets are starting to come online. If we go to the next slide, we can actually take a look deeper at query volume. So whereas the previous slide was the number of APIs that were built, this is the actual usage of those APIs. So you can see DeFi is definitely dominating usage with over 90%, but we are still seeing, growth in other areas like network analytics. So this is maybe, data on an L2 like a Matic or Polygon, and also DAOs. And we're starting to see a lot more useful DAOs. And so as Karen mentioned, DAO treasuries that are growing, but also implying that many users are actually now participating in those DAOs, not just the capital allocators. If we head to the next slide, we can even see what the initial activity has been from curation about these APIs. So the graph is a decentralized network where anybody can actually curate the type of data, that is prioritized by the network. And so this is a great visual of just the initial activity we're seeing where, something like an UMA, which is a derivatives platform, is seeing quite a bit of usage. They're making up a significant portion of query fees, but something like a live peer or Curve or a Reflex are actually seeing a lot more confidence. And so we're excited to see how this evolves within the Ethereum space as we see these dApps get more usage. And so one of the trends we're seeing is that open source development and usage of open source APIs is actually stirring greater innovation. This means that dApps can build on top of each other's protocols. So we're seeing a lot of inter-protocol play. We're also seeing a lot of dApps sharing APIs, whereas a team maybe building on the same Uniswap smart contracts would have to build their API or build a proprietary server. When you share those APIs, it actually reduces that redundant work and saves developer teams time. So we're actually accelerating the pace of development in our space. And the last thing we're seeing is a lot more front-end diversity. So I'm sure a lot of people heard about how Uniswap, was making some specific decisions for their UI. But the cool thing about Ethereum and open APIs is anybody can build on top of the open protocol. And so we're excited to see more front-end diversity. And if we head to the next slide, when we think about what are the emerging trends from the API query volume we're seeing, as I mentioned, NFTs and generative art are really up and coming. Useful DAOs, especially in DeFi, so better managing those treasuries, as well as the way that funding is being allocated to specific teams, so specific grants, the quality and caliber of teams or initiatives. Analytics, and then lastly, layer 2 and multi-blockchain. Although we are, Ethereum centric, we do look to allow developers to build on any platform they choose. And so we're seeing a lot more adoption of Ethereum-based layer 2s or EVM-based chains, like a Phantom, Polygon, Celo, et cetera.
Great. Thanks, Ava. So we just wanted to leave a few more components for the participants here to pay attention to as to what to watch now. So scaling, we mentioned, whether that's through layer 2 applications or otherwise, is something that is having a lot of movement, as well as applications growing with different privacy preserving mechanisms. Blockchain state growth is something that continues to be addressed in different ways, as well as blockchain security, which in many ways has changed from one concerns we had a few years ago to different concerns now around transaction ordering and things of that nature. Government regulations continue to develop all over the world. Stablecoin growth continues to grow. I believe we're over 100 billion at this point in stablecoins right now. And user experience and accessibility. There are some applications coming out with direct access to a layer 2 scalable technology directly from fiat to cryptocurrency conversion, and that is expected to accelerate. So it's all very exciting, and we look forward to hearing more at this session.